morning. Again, I consider these kind of events a special Kiddush Hashem, because what you do on your day off shows what you'd like to be doing all the time. And I feel very bad for those people on their day off that are working, because what are they here for? Just to work in life? I find that a little bit difficult. But those people who find this more productive, more pressing than to take care of the other obligations that they may have, at least to start off their day, that they have a chofesh with Limud Torah, is an unbelievable Kiddush Hashem. And I feel it to be a schus, to be able to speak to people who understand that important concept about the basic necessity of Limud Torah, the necessity to be inspired whenever we have the opportunity. The subject of today's shir is Gneivas das. Gneivas das probably should be translated as fooling somebody. That's probably the closest general translation that I can say. Literally, it means to steal somebody's understanding. In the Torah, it's used, Gneivas levavi. Yaakov fooled Lavan, and he scurried away when nobody was looking. And Lavan complains, Gneivas levavi, you stole my heart. What does that mean, you stole my heart? What it means is I was emotionally in one place and you put me somewhere else. The first halacha of Choshen Mishpat that discusses Oinoas Dvarim, and in Choshen Mishpat, Gneivas das is a branch of Oinoas Dvarim. It's actually a machlokas rishonim if it's part of the Isser Gneiva, Oinoas Dvarim, or Sheker. And Shulchan Aruch, it's placed with Oinoas Dvarim. The Shulchan Aruch says that Oinoas Dvarim is greater, a bigger avera, than actually Oinoas Mammon, than taking somebody else's money away. And the Gemara says that the person who cries out in anguish when he has been abused by somebody else's words, he is answered right away, his tefillos are answered right away. And I think that these words of Chazal, which is actually the Shulchan Aruch, is a Gemara, needs an explanation. And I would like to just borrow from a different concept in Choshen Mishpat to understand a little bit about the human dynamic. A person who has a workman that comes to his house, a plumber, a carpenter, fix-it man, builder, whatever it is, so there's a special mitzvah in the Torah to pay for services rendered in that time period. I'm not right now, it's not a shir on what that time period is. And a person who doesn't do it forfeits a mitzvah deraisa, could be transgresses on an avera. And yet, if I owe a bill to a company and I don't pay on time, there is no such direct commandment from the Torah addressing that issue. And I have pondered, why should that be so? I think the answer is very simple. Anybody who's ever met a craftsman, he considers his work an expression of his self. If I sell lumber, fruit, shoes, so I'm in business, and what I sell isn't who I am, what I am. But a person who is creative and makes things, every object that he sells is an expression of his self. And when you don't give the proper respect to the work that he has given of himself, you are rejecting that person. That hurts. Whereas if the person is just selling items, whether you pay or didn't pay does not reflect your appreciation of the persona of the person that you're dealing with. And I think that's the reason why the Torah is extra particular to make sure that one pays on time somebody who gave their leiv and nefesh to give you a service. At least allegedly gave his leiv and nefesh to give you a service. If I stole your money, I stole your money. Nothing more serious than that. Not saying it's not serious. Rav David Kaplan is going to speak here, Emir Hashem, in a short while. Had an uncle, a Mendel Kaplan, who was from the foremost mechanchim of America when I was a teenager, a Talmud of the old school who transplanted Torah ideas to American boys. And he was driving his jalopy, his car, if I'm not mistaken, over to George Washington Bridge. And he hit the guardrail. And he kept on driving. And a policeman pulled him over. He got out of his car. The policeman saw a rabbi. He said, "Rabbi, you got a bang on your side." So he looked the policeman in the eye and said, "I didn't get a bang on my side. My car got a bang on its side." If you live in America, a non-Jewish workman who I knew who owned a town car that probably would take 20 years of his salaries to buy one, I asked him, "Why do you spend all your money on your car?" So he said to me, "That's my living room on wheels." That's an expression of self. Just as a lady is creative in making sure that her home gives off an aura and understanding of who she is, in America, a person's car is an expression of self. Rabbi Kaplan taught us that a car is just a horse that gets you from one place to the other. And it is not an expression of self, and I did not get a bang on my side. My car got a bang on its side, and I'm, Baruch Hashem, healthy and wise. A person who is abused verbally, that attack is much more personal than if you stole his money. You attacked the character to the core. That's why I know Zvarim, in my opinion, is extremely, extremely deep. And when he cries out, HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers him. So when you take advantage of somebody else, you're taking advantage of his self-appreciation, and that really hurts. And when he cries out, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen. So therefore, I think it's worthwhile to know, what are you allowed to do? What are you allowed to say? And how far can you push it and be okay? And how far a person has to be careful not to cause anybody to feel bad because of his words, even if it's not going to cost anybody any money, and to make sure you don't put up a fake facade about how you are in order that people should give you recognition that you don't deserve. I would like to start off with a Chazon Ish in Emunah B'Tachin, which I think he underwrites that which I've said before in a very powerful way. Dinah was taken by Shechem, abused, and the brothers decided it's time to take revenge. They didn't tell Yaakov. They made up some kind of a deal with Shechem, and when they were physically suffering, they annihilated a whole community. In the Torah, Yaakov chastised them, and they respond, very unclear conversation of what exactly transpired. You are not allowed to fool people. The Kosov Ramban, the Anshe Stoim, the Anshe Shechem, Hayu Nidoinim Lamisa Min Adin. Al Pi Halacha, they deserved to be put to death. Varei Chibzu Es Dinu Ve'inu Oisa, it explains why. Mikol Mokom. Though that be the case that they were deserving of the death penalty, Lo Hiskim Yaakov Avinu Imohem, Yaakov did not agree to the plot of his children, Mipnei Sheshimshu B'Gneivas Das, being that the Shiftei Ka employed Gneivas Das to meet out the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to kill all of that city. Achrei Shalev Anshe Hashem Haya Batuach Bemunasam Ubeyashris Libam Lo Yase Imohem Ra. They took advantage of the mindset of these Rishoyim. The people of Shechem deserve to be killed, and in a holy jihad to do the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Shiftei Ka employed Gneivas Das. So Yaakov Avinu said, the ends do not justify the means. I think that the Ramban is amazing. How serious is Gneivas Das? Well, I'm doing it for a good reason. I don't know if it's a better reason. You have to come up with a better reason than the Shiftei Ka on Shechem, Goyim that were deserving of the death penalty. And Yaakov Avinu says that just will not do it. Rabbi Yoina, in his discussion of Gneivas Das, I don't have the time to read through it all. Mishema'anes Chavero, somebody who uses this kind of idea, and he says, I did for you a favor, spoke to somebody in your favor, v'lo also. On this, the Gemara says, also lignov das habrios, it's forbidden for a person to fool somebody. Afilu das goy. Hine hachet hazeh, this chet, chomer eitzel chachme Yisrael yoisil migezel hagoy. It's worse than actually taking his money to fool him. Yan biyanki sfas sheker va'ashma rabo. In other words, theoretically, if you had a choice, you need money to sell a fake item to a guy or steal his money. There's an aspect of selling him a fake item or even telling him that it's whatever it is and it's not. There's an Isser Gomer. I am not a businessman by profession, and I would like to tell you an incident that happened to me in the world of business. I bought an item, legally brought it to Eretz Yisrael, and I decided I'm going to sell it. So a friend of mine told me, he knows me very well, he says, you in business, that's not going to work out so well. I'll fence the goods. That's not what he said. He said, I'll sell it. So I said, okay, no lying. Just everything the truth. It'll work out. Just no problem, we won't lie. So I decided I wasn't going to trust him so much. This fellow today is a millionaire, by the way. I'm not sure on whose money, but just listen to the story. So we go to the first place. Let's say I paid for the item $50, and I said I wanted $100 for it. So the first person asks him, how much did you pay for the item? So the guy looks him in the eye and says $75. I'm standing right there. Right? It's not even... And somehow I get the guy out of that place of business, and I say to him, I don't understand. I told you not to lie. So I didn't lie, this is business. Now, Rabbi Isai, this is not a joke, this is for real. I remember I was very disturbed because I had a Gemara which argues with my friend. The Gemara says, Ein Adam Chayte v'loi loi. A person doesn't do an Aveira if he's not going to get any benefit out of it. I wasn't paying him anything. He offered to do me a favor. Where's the stash of cash that the guy is doing this Aveira for? Until I realized Chazal just meant the person doesn't do things which he thinks that they're an Aveira. This fellow actually believed that's how you do business. Business 101 is to lie. Okay, this is not a shir on emes and sheker, but this is a question which we'll revisit and find out if he actually was over on Gneivas das or not. The Chavetz Chaim in Hilchos Shmir Saloshin explains, the Bermaim Chaim, if a person has a secret and you find out what his secret is, you're over on Gneivas das. There's a Cherem Rabbeinu Gershon to read somebody else's mail. And according to the many of the Mefarshim, this is an aspect of Gneivas das. It's my personal property, my personal information, and you have no right to access it. I didn't want to share it with you. And according to many, there's an Isra of Gneivas das. This Isra of Gneivas das goes so far, as I've seen this done many times, and there's actually a machloikis about this issue. Nowadays, I'm willing to accept that there's a machloikis about this issue, and 25 years ago, I would have said it's vadai osir. We live in a time that 25 years ago, if I would be speaking to you, I would assume that I'm speaking just to you. This machine that's staring me in the face without any derech eretz at all means that I'm speaking possibly to a far greater audience than those people that are sitting here today. I don't think that anybody nowadays would necessarily be surprised if they had a conversation with somebody and then they found out that it was recorded. 25 years ago, I don't think that that was the realm of reality of possibility. Though 25 years ago, the devices existed, but it wasn't so widespread that it was done. And people just assumed, if I'm speaking to you, that that's where it starts and that's where it ends. Whether that is true today, if a person has a conversation with somebody else, if he doesn't say, am I being recorded, if he has a right to assume that he's not being recorded, is a machlokes hapoiskim. Why? Because all of halacha of Choshen Mishpat that has to do with interpersonal relationships is superimposed on the environment and the norms of that community which it's done in. That means, if we're speaking about Orthodox Jews, if I would have a conversation with somebody on Shabbos, I have a right to assume that nobody's recording it. Whereas if I had it on Sunday, that wouldn't necessarily be so. Okay? I'm not getting involved in the halachic aspect, but what is called private can actually fluctuate, but something which was private, and a person said it should not be given over to other people, a person should be aware of it, that is a isser of Gneivas das. I would like to make it clear. Shulchan Aruch Rav in Hilchos Oinov Gneivas das makes it clear that the isser of Gneivas das does not depend on if somebody is going to lose something because of it or not. Even if somebody is going to appreciate something in a different way, there will be an isser of Gneivas das. And the halachos in Shulchan Aruch enumerate on examples of this issue. I would like to share with you a quandary that I had myself in Hilchos Gneivas das that I forgot all about it. Charus of mine in Yerushalayim, he heard that I'm giving a shir on Gneivas das, so he said to me, are you going to speak about what happened last year on Lag BaOmer? So I said to him, what happened last year on Lag BaOmer? So he said, you had a shayla in Hilchos Gneivas das. I said, I did? Tell me about it. Please inform me. So he said to me as follows. Last year, lo aleinu lo aleichem, you were in a year of Avelus, and you didn't go to any chasanas unless your obligation as a Rav demanded that of you. And there was a chasana of somebody who you are a Rav in his life, very prominent in his life, that made a chasana. And you decided, you told me that you're going to that chasana, and we went together to that chasana. So far, this is all, I'd like to see this again, I didn't remember anything about this. When we were at that chasana, we found out that somebody that used to live in the community that you were very close to for many years was making chasana in the next hall, 1 minute away. And I told you I'm going to that chasana. And you went into deliberation. You had two questions at once. Halachically, should I go to that chasna or not? Does my relationship as a Rav allow me, demand of me, that I go? And second of all, would I have gone to that chasana starting off from my home? I'm going to walk into the chasana. The fellow knows that I'm in the year of Avelus. And if I'm going to show up, he understood not only did I feel the relationship so close that it allowed me from Hilchos Avelus to come in, but also that I consider him such a dear and close person to me that I made this special effort, and it wasn't clear that I would make that special effort or not. So I was stuck in a quandary. What am I supposed to do? So I asked him, so what did I do? At this point already I remembered more or less this all happened. You went, and they explained to me, he told me exactly what I told him at the time, the process that I came to a conclusion whether I should or shouldn't go. But this is an example, this happens many times. A person will have, on Lag BaOmer it's very often, a person will have two chasanas in Yerushalayim, and could be I wouldn't have gone to either chasana in Yerushalayim, but if I already have two chasanas in Yerushalayim, so then I'll go to both. And both the people will think, thought, wow, the guy traveled all the way from Beit Shemesh to Yerushalayim to come to my chasna. So when I come in, do I have to say to him, don't think I'm here because I like you. I'm only here because I like the guy next door. Is that what I have to say? Or am I allowed to just be quiet and allow him to assume that I was matriach myself for him solely? We will, Mirz Hashem, answer this question, at least give rules to answering this question by the time that we finish this year. But I'm just giving you examples. These are regular events that happen in our lives, and we many times capitalize on them without realizing that maybe it's not a lie, it's business. That's the way I lead my life. This is an idea which I really would like to hammer home, so to speak.
It's very subtle.
What?
It's very subtle.
It's very subtle. That's why I have to explain it. All right. I would like to tell over a story that happened to a friend of mine. And after this, talk about some practical cases. I have a friend of mine who was in a yeshiva tichoni here in Eretz Yisrael by coercion of his parents. He was convinced that he's going to be the next Gadol Hador. He is a very big masmid, and he is a very prominent, well-celebrated Talmud Chacham here in Eretz Yisrael today. And his parents forced him to go to Limudei Chol. He is an American, was brought up his formative years in America, and English was natural to him. And there were many kids in his class that were Israelis and were struggling with English, and they had to take exams in English, and they wanted to cheat from him. Now he's an Erlich Bacher. Maybe it's usher. So he went to Rav Shach, and he asked Rav Shach, am I allowed to let them cheat from me? And Rav Shach said no. So he asked him, why not? And Rav Shach said one reason, and he explained why that's not a reason. Another reason, it's not a reason. A whole bunch of reasons, 4 or 5 reasons Rav Shach gave to explain why you're not allowed to let them cheat. And then Rav Shach got frustrated at him, and he said, you're not allowed to cheat, val medav zayin hamensh. Okay? I'm not sure how you translate that into English or into Hebrew, but I think that the idea is a person has to be an upstanding Jew that we can be proud of. Okay? That was Rav Shach's answer to my friend. Discusses cheating on regents. O levels, A levels, I don't know what they're called. I forgot exactly what they are for you people who come from the other side. And Rav Shach and Rav Moshe clearly asers cheating. And he goes through a variety of reasons that it's aser min haTorah, aside from Dina de Malchusa. A very inspiring tshuva, it's worthwhile to see. And one of the things which he says in that tshuva is that people will give you a job based on the fact of your excellence, that you're on par in this and that and the other thing. And not only is it Gneivas das, it's Gneivas mamon. Because I think that you're qualified and you may be underqualified. So not only is it Gneivas das, it's Gneivas mamon. So I'm not going to get involved. There's a true from Rav Vosner, true from Rasha Klein, true a lot of poskim about this idea about cheating, that it's aser mishum Gneivas das. Now, I get asked the question all the time, and I'm not going to expound on it, but everybody does it. Okay, I don't know if you ever heard that expression, but everybody does it. My wife, she says, there's room in Gehenna for everybody. That's no problem. Everybody does it. That's no problem. We can always build on in the halal. There's no problem to fit everybody in. But the question is, and this is really a question, there are many situations that everybody does it. I'm not saying when everybody does it, that it's assumed that what a person is going to and not going to do. Now, life gets a little sticky. The halacha is clear. The Gemara says, fascinating statement in the Gemara. A prominent Talmud Chacham was coming, and there were two junior Talmidei Chachamim coming in the opposite direction. And he said, you didn't have to come to greet me all this way. Now, they didn't know he was coming at all. They were going on their own route to do something else, and they happened to bump into him. So he thinks that they're trying to be mechaber him, and in reality, they were just doing their own thing. Do they have to say or don't they have to say? Bottom line, when the person makes an assumption that he didn't have a right to make, you're not mechuyev to correct him. That means there are many people walking on the street. Not everybody's out there to greet you. If you decided, this is the psak of most paiskim, if he decided to assume that you're doing it to greet him, and you were just going where you were going, you're not mechuyev to correct him. If it's not expected that you should be at that place at that time, that we'll call it, it's 90% for sure that the reason why you're there is for that reason, then it would become a question of Gneivas das, according to most poskim, even if you didn't say anything. So now,
Can you just clarify that last
I'm going to give an example. I'm willing to say, there's this place in Bnei Brak, I call it the Chasana City. There's a place within 2 blocks, less, a couple of 100 meters, that there's 8 chasana halls. How many? Unbelievable amount of chasanas that go on there every single night. Don't park anywhere in the neighborhood. Okay? Now, a person who makes a chasana over there, and somebody came in from Yerushalayim into that other chasana, in my opinion, we all understand that there's 8 chasanas here. The chances of somebody having 2 chasanas in Bnei Brak on Lag BaOmer night in Bnei Brak is reasonable to assume. Okay. What about if you happen to have 2 chasanas in Beit Shemesh in one night? So the chance, somebody not from Beit Shemesh, somebody from Bnei Brak, from Yerushalayim, from Haifa, the chances of that happening are infinitely smaller than it is in Bnei Brak when there's 8 halls and you're serving a much greater population. It depends, in my opinion, it depends many times on what would be considered normal to assume. If it's within reason to assume that the person is there because of a variety of reasons, and that, if you give an example, you go talk about Bnei Brak, Yerushalayim, talking about cities with large amounts of people there. I myself, I know I have things I have to do in Bnei Brak. I push it off till I'll have something else to go and do there, and I'll do them all at once. You know, you stack them up together. That's a normal way of doing business when you have to go to do something in Bnei Brak. If I had something to do in Netivot, I would just go and do it because it's either now or never, or whatever. I don't know reason to assume it's going to happen at a later date. So when is it that the person has a right to keep quiet and not say anything? That depends on whether the other person is assuming something he had no right to assume, or he's assuming something that he had a right to assume. So whether you said it or didn't say it is minor as to whether you're giving over a clear concept or not. Did I answer your question? Okay, that's one situation. The Mishnah in Demai, Perek Daled, Mishnah Daled, speaks about a person who's a guest in your home. So I have, let's use this as an example, I have Meiser Ani in my home. I happen to have a boutique vineyard, and I make very expensive wine, but nobody knows about it. You just think that I'm a rabbi. And I have Meiser Ani from this vineyard, and the Ani comes to my table. So I would like to give you, you're a great guy, I would like to give you a bottle of this expensive wine because you're such a wonderful fellow. And I give it to him, and he accepts it. He's very grateful to me. Why? Because I gave him a 250 shekel bottle of wine. How much did that cost me? Nothing. Not only that, it's not even mine. I'm mechuyev to give it to an ani. I just found the b'kovedik way to give it to an ani. Is there an issue of Gneivas das? So the poskim say yes. That means I'm giving him something. And if he is going to be more thankful to me than what I really did to him, there's an inyan of Gneivas das. In other words, here you are in Beit Shemesh, and you tell somebody else, you tell the fellow sitting next to you, you know, I really have to get to Yerushalayim today, and the bus service is lousy because of the environment of today. So the guy says, you know what, I'll take you to Yerushalayim. So you can take me to Yerushalayim? So, yeah, I have a day off anyways. So you take him to Yerushalayim. The Maisa, you have an appointment in Yerushalayim at 1 o'clock. You anyways are going to Yerushalayim. How grateful is he going to be to you for that trip? He thinks that you went from Beit Shemesh to Yerushalayim and back because of him. You're mechuyev to tell him, you're not so important in my life. You're not supposed to insult him. But you should have to tell him that you should know that I was going anyways, so that he should give you the proper hakoras hatoiv. If you're going to take credit where it's not due, then you're over on Gneivas das. Now, I would like to say, I saw once a tshuva in Hilchos Gneivas das that I disagree with, and I'd like to share it with you. I'll use the classical example. Somebody moves to the big city from the outskirts, whether it's in the Lower East Side of New York or he's walking the streets of Yerushalayim, and somebody's out there selling perfume or watches that are, you know, the best companies of all times, and they're selling, you know, say that those watches for 100 shekel, mamash steel, tarte mashma. Okay, anyways, so you understand it's not a steal of the real thing, it's a steal of the fake thing. But anyways, and so you buy one, unbeknownst to you that this is not even counterfeit goods. It's not, they don't even make the stuff in China. Anyways, so you buy it for 100 shekel, and you give it to somebody as a present. You don't know anything. You come from out of town where people are honest, and then somebody tells you that watch that you spent 100 shekel, you basically blew 99.5 shekel. That's basically what it's worth. The fellow who you gave it to knows you as an upstanding Jew. He assumes that you gave him a $500 watch or a $100 watch. So this fellow wrote a tshuva, said that you're mechuyev to tell him, because he is going to give you recognition for the value which he assumed that he got, and he got less value. Now, obviously, if you bought something on sale and you gave it to him for the, you know, because you got it for half price or whatever, that doesn't make a difference. But if you gave him something and he assumes he's getting one value and he's getting a different value, so then because of Hilchos Gneivas das, could be you're obligated to tell him. That's what this tshuva says. I would like to disagree.
Getting a lesser value or a greater value?
Yeah, but no. Let me finish my sentence, and then I think as follows: if I spent 100 shekel on you, so you should give me recognition because of the fact I spent 100 shekel on you. Whether I was fooled into spending 100 shekel for air, or I spent 100. It doesn't make a difference what. You should have recognition to me because I felt that you're worth 100 shekel. Whether you indeed received 100 shekel or not, in my opinion, is irrelevant. No, that's not the subject. The Akaras HaToiv, and this is actually the Daitis of Machlokes, the Choivas Halvavos, and Chaim Shmulevitz. This is a subject that has to be explored on its own. But the bottom line is, this is the Nakuda which I'd like to discuss, a person who does something and he gets recognition, whether you heard somebody say a great idea and then you pawn it off as your own, plagiarizing, that's Gneivas das, and that's Aser. Whether it's you did a favor for somebody and you really didn't do such a big favor, sometimes you're doing it actually for yourself because it's going to boost you up, you're not really doing it for him. A person has to be aware, the aside of the Isra of Gneivas das is that the people are going to respond to you because of that which you did with a certain level of respect or recognition based on a fraudulent happening. You have abused them. You have fooled them into receive recognition which you don't deserve. That's the aside of this Isser. This Isser goes so far as, according to the Rambam and the Ridvaz, a person, and this is very strange because we a lot of times know the truth, but we still prefer to believe what's more glamorous. A person does magic tricks. Now, does magic tricks, so before he says everything I'm doing is a sleight of hand, right? And then he does the magic, and you're amazed at the magic he's doing. Now, you know that he's not a magician. He just knows some way to have sleight of hand or to do something quicker than you. And even though that's the case, according to the Rambam, according to the Ravaz, could very well be that it's an Isra of Gneivas das, even though you know the truth. Because emotionally, the person still believes that it's a trick, even though he knows that it's not a trick, and that's part of the realm of emotions. Where there is a heter of Gneivas das, as follows. I have a friend of mine in America that he went into the wholesale supply of hotels and restaurants. And I asked him, how did you cut your way into the business? He said, oh, very simple. I did a study on what products these people check out the prices. On all of those prices, all those items, I lowered my price. And on the things that nobody checks out, I hired my price. But I made sure that it's lower, the sachakol, by an amount of dollars that makes it look worthwhile. And I moved into the business, and eventually I had the same price as everybody else, but I was already a player in the game. That is 100% permissible. Because everybody knows that there's a concept called come-ons. You go to the store, they sell you something at rock bottom prices, because once they have you there, they know they're going to get you on some other things. That's 100% permissible. Where it's not permissible is where the gimmick of the come-on item is not readily, or people don't assume it. Now I'm going to give you an example. Person writes, I'm selling glasses, cheapest frames in town. And it's true. It just happens to be from the most high-ended on the lenses. So everybody runs to the store to buy the frames, and then they get killed on the lenses. That's 100% permissible, because everybody knows that's the way people do business. If I'm going to sell something, tomorrow it's going to be outdated. So legally it's okay to sell it, but really its real value is about to drop, and nobody checks the prices, or it's already post-dated, but it's still okay, and I'm not really reflecting the real price, then there could be an aspect of Gneivas das. So it depends not only on the true value, it depends on how much people are aware and astute of that what you're doing. So the bottom line, in summation of the Isser of Gneivas das, is about taking advantage of somebody else in an area where he had a right to assume what he assumed. And in order to be an Er L'Chayit, we have an obligation to be upfront about the way that we express who we are, what we are, and what we're selling.